Hello, Cooped Up World. This is Marlin M. Jenkins, poet from Detroit, Michigan, coming at you from my kitchen here in St. Paul, Minnesota. Um, very excited to be talking to y'all. Very excited that Jeff Kass sent out a note asking to be involved in this project. So excited to find these new ways to share poems in this time where we're not able to gather and share that way in the same ways we could just a few weeks ago. So I'll say more in a second, but I'd like to introduce myself with a poem, so we'll start there. This poem was written after a poem by Ada Limon. My poem is called From. I come from the blood that drips from the thumb cut on the opening of a beer can. That threshold of ledge between air and a contained liquid, the thin opening that allows a drip lost in the rippling brown. I come from not the stone, but from the stone's man-made sharp edge, the way a bone could be a club or could be fuel for the broth, could be the structure held while the human teeth rip flesh from a wing. I come from the salted sauce, the crushed garlic in a wooden bowl, a bowl of pickled turnips turning their edges to soft brown. I come from pronounced brows, from a land where some roll their R's and some drop them, where some stop in the dead of night to pray for cousins when the spirit hits. I come from a land hit by the spirit or spirits or bottles of liquor or the voices of God and ancestors of stories warping over time's indifferent swiftness. My mother went to a different country for her first marriage, moved to a new city after the ending of the second. My father learned the loneliness a suburb washes us in, swishes us around in its cheeks. In the river near where I'm from, there are many fish, and for them to live their best lives, it means I will never see them. They swim within the water's dark murk, beyond anything what our vision can pierce. It is so tempting to tempt. It is so easy to miss history, so easy to miss the catch. When we played at the park, my father would throw the soft ball, gentle, direct. It came for me. I flinched. Cool. That was the first poem. So I wanted to start with that poem for a couple of reasons. One, obviously because it's kind of an origin story, even if an atypical one in some ways. But I also wanted to start with it because I've been thinking a lot about that poem ever since I read it in Jeff Kass's class the last time that I came through to do a class visit before I moved out here to Minnesota. And Kass asked something like, why is it important that the speaker flinches at the end? And it was something I felt like it made sense enough to me to include it in the poem, but I didn't yet know how to articulate an answer to that question. And so after that, I thought a lot about it. And should I revise that moment? Is it not developed yet? But I settled on keeping it. And the reason is because in that poem, I'm thinking a lot about the pride that comes with inheritance, the pride of coming from where you're from, with things like language, things like food, things like being proud of your parents, things like that. But alongside that, the poem is thinking a lot about violence and a lot about the difficulty in figuring out, what it is that we inherit. How do we think about the hard parts of where we come from? And so I think that that final moment of flinching really is me recognizing and leaning into trying to balance out that pride with that difficulty of understanding violence, and thinking about, when that violence that comes at us, what are we going to do with it? How do we respond to it? And realizing that my inherent response is fear. Even though having a baseball thrown at you isn't something that's scary for most people, that's a phobia that I have. I'm terrified of baseballs. But even that idea of having something thrown at you is something, that I wanted to kind of capture in that final image. So that's why I wanted to start with that poem. I'll read 3 more poems. I'll read a couple poems from my chapbook. Just came out a few weeks ago. February 18th was the official release date. It's called Capable Monsters. I love this little cover art here by Maria Krutz, incredible artist. Yeah. I'm real proud of this book. I'm really happy that it's in the world. I'm a little disappointed that a lot of the tour had to be canceled, but I'm really hoping that on the other side of this, we can reschedule a lot of those visits, get to travel and let the poems carry me places physically, in a physical sense. Hopefully soon. This book is doing a lot of different things. Part of what it's doing is using the world of Pokemon from the video games and the anime as a way to think about things in our world. And so the primary series here is what I call Pokédex poems. So if you're not familiar with Pokemon, the Pokédex is like the encyclopedia of Pokemon. It has all the information you need to know about a particular species or type of Pokemon, and then it has a little quote, a little entry, a little blurb that says something about that Pokemon. So the poem I'm going to start with is inspired by Bulbasaur. So it starts with the Pokédex, that encyclopedia entry number, the name, and then that little quote that kind of inspired the poem. Pokédex entry number 1, Bulbasaur. A strange seed was planted on its back at birth. The plant sprouts and grows with this Pokemon. Root wrapped around spine. Preflower. Vine underbud. What do we call what we carry on and in our backs? What burns under our skin and ties itself to our nerves and endings. I was born with bad blood and the makings of napped hair and crackled skin and all the things the doctor makes me list. The family history of depression, addiction, cancer, and maybe there are some patterns we cannot break. Research says trauma from our parents may live in our DNA. The bulbous nucleus at the center of each cell like a bulb ready, dangerous, the sprouting collage in each of us. I let my seed grow, sprout, open, everything given to me at birth, awesome and visible, my awful nourishment. So I like to kind of start with that poem often when I'm reading from this chapbook because it's an early poem. It's the third poem in the book, and it's also the first one in that series of Pokédex entries. I'm gonna read one more of these, and then we'll close out with something else. We're gonna kind of keep on this theme of inheritance. I think a lot in my work about how did we get to where we got, whether that's actually our DNA, what genes did we inherit, or what cultural things have we inherited, how has history brought us to this moment, what can we learn from it, what are we taught by society that we maybe need to challenge or unlearn. So we'll kind of ride out that theme for today's reading. This one is Pokédex entry number 468, Togekiss. It shares many blessings with people who respect one another's rights and avoid needless strife. It will never appear when there is strife. Its sightings have become rare recently. We haven't seen a Togekiss since the invention of the gun. No, the knife. No, it was the first time a man used a stick, its end sharpened to creature-killing point to meet the heart of another man. Maybe it was before we turned even hydrogen to weapon. No, we haven't seen a Togekiss since the bridge lined with bodies, their bones broken under the hooves of horses. We haven't seen a Togekiss since a man demanded spice, demanded his faith inflicted on the faith of others, demanded access to the land, traveled overseas to enact these desires. Even before then, did we see a Togekiss before the first circle of men reaching to grab stones, using the products of the good earth to purge life from a shamed body? Before a brother shed a brother's blood in a field, before a man blamed a woman for swallowing the flesh of corrupted fruit. I'm beginning to think they are only myth, that the creature remains stuck, barely hatched from its egg, small new wings barely able to develop, hovering low over accursed ground, holding a blessing until, with no one to bless, it withers back to embryo, pulls the shards of egg back together and sighs, and hides, and sleeps. That one I think is interesting for me to kind of close with. We'll have one more poem, but kind of close that section where we're reading from the chapbook because it's one of the newest poems that came out of this project. That one I think it wasn't even written. I had notes for it, but it didn't actually make the stage of even being a draft until the collection had been picked up for publication, and so it kind of slipped its way in there right at the end. We'll close with this final poem that's it's not new, but it's newer than most of the poems that are in the chapbook. It's inspired by a song by the band NERD. The song's called "Everyone Knows," and the chorus, the hook of the song, just repeats the line. It says Pharrell screaming, "All the girls standing in the line for the bathroom" over and over. And since that song came out, which I don't know, must have been 2007 maybe, if I had to guess, I always found the song to be really bizarre and kind of unsettling, and couldn't figure out how I felt about it. And then finally, much later, it my feelings about it kind of manifested into how it inspired this poem. Quick tea break. Shout out to Devin Samuels for this gift. I'm always very impressed with people who can not only craft poems, but craft things with their hands. So thank you for making and gifting me that mug. I use it almost every day. I love it. Thank you. All the girls standing in the line for the bathroom after NERD's Everyone Knows. All the wholesome messages written on the stall walls. You are valid, you deserve to take up space. All the toasts so eager we spill the brown liquid on our nice shirts. All the alcohol we decided not to drink. All the present fathers, hand-painting benches on porches. All the parents out on picnics, fingertips wet on plastic champagne flutes. All the aunts too busy in their tunnels to notice anything but their bustling siblings. All the basketball games played in the driveway with the rim nailed to the garage. All the men nailed to the club wall scouting. Replace them with men there with friends bothering no one. All the girls safe. All the boys accountable. All the bathrooms with working sinks. Our small efforts to keep clean, to prepare to return to the world when we're done in these small rooms. All the lights. All the murals ornamenting the ungardened district with flowers. All the bees zipping to the melted juice of snow cones next to garbage cans and not into black children's hair. All the roly-polies in the crevice under the garage door stirring with the light as the door lifts. It took me too long to learn not to touch them, to let them be. Turns out, the rolling into a ball, the thing we know them for, is a response to fear, to threat. All the fathers teaching their sons what to do with their hands, which is to say what not to do with them. All the hands in pockets, or popping pimples in the mirror, or posing for silly selfies, or planting new trees, letting them grow at their own pace and build their fresh buds, their uninterrupted roots. Cool. So that's my time. Thank you so much for listening. Again, thank you so much to Jeff Kass for making this space for these videos. So glad to be able to share the work through this form. Stay safe, stay healthy. Remember to love yourself and to love the people that you love. I just recently got a letter from a friend in the mail, and it said something like that her therapist said, this is a great time to remember to be kind to yourself. And so I'll pass that reminder and that encouragement onto you as well. Remember to be kind to yourself and keep doing what you do. We'll see you.